3 spine-chilling true stories revealed. Sinister hauntings that exposed hidden TRRORS. Sarah Reeve always thought of Maplewood as the kind of suburban dream where every porch light flickered like a friendly wink. Under the dim glow of streetlights, she would come home after a long shift at the diner, the tips in her pocket, her 2 young kids waiting to wrap their tiny arms around her. But that peace begins to crack on a night like any other. A shiver running down her spine as she hears her name whispered from the basement, Sarah. The chill slithers down her back, freezing her to the spot. The voice calls again, each syllable drenched in something dark, something sinister. Sarah's heart races as she steps towards the basement door, her pulse a frantic drumbeat. No, she tells herself. Just the kid's imagination, right? But that voice calls again, insistent, beckoning her into a void that feels older than her house. Ancient secrets lying in wait. With a shaking hand, she flicks on a flashlight, its beam flickering just like her nerves as she pushes the door open. She descends the creaking steps. Darkness swallows her whole. Whatever instincts keep a safe scream at her to turn back. Yet curiosity grips her tighter, forging ahead through whispers creeping like cold fingers on her skin. Suddenly, the beam of her flashlight reveals what looks like a hidden passageway. The air thick with dust and the weight of lost memories. Legends of Maplewood flood into her mind. Stories of betrayals and ghostly vengeance now feel dangerously close. Night after night, something stirs in her home. Shadows dart in her peripheral vision. Icy spots bloom like bruises on warm walls, and the whispers grow more desperate. She feels their urgency, lingers to understand the secrets she has unlocked. It starts with objects: a mug gone from the counter, the kids' toys rearranging themselves overnight. As she investigates, panic swells within her as she realizes someone has been living in that passageway. That friendly neighbor, Mr. Thompson, had always seemed a welcomed presence. But was that twisted smile laced with something much darker? Sarah's instincts scream betrayal. The man she trusted to babysit her children, a fixture in their lives, may be the source of the horror. She wants to alert her community, but when she confides in friends, they look at her like she's cracked. Little do they know the danger lurking behind her cheerful facade. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the whispers turn to screeches, Sarah's world spirals into chaos. She glances at her children sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the terror crawling closer. The whispers morph into taunts, echoing through walls. She starts feeling watched, a presence closing in around her. Just when she thinks she might piece together the malevolence behind her home, she hears it again, Mr. Thompson's voice, now right behind her, a sickly sweet tone masking his intent. Frozen on the staircase, heart pounding like a war drum, Sarah musters courage. But with every ounce of strength, she knows one truth: she's not just fighting for herself anymore. She needs to protect her kids from the dark secret woven into their community. Will she find the strength to uncover the unseen terror? Or will she and her children be swallowed by the shadows lingering in their once safe home? The air thickens as Sarah feels Mr. Thompson's shadow loom behind her, chilling her to the core. Panic grips her, a vice closing around her heart. Every fiber of her being screams to flee, but she can't turn back now. Not with her children so close, so vulnerable. Mustering every ounce of courage, she spins around to face him, flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. Mr. Thompson, her voice trembles, barely a whisper. What do you want? His smile widens, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Instead, they glint with something unnatural, something that makes her stomach churn. Oh, Sarah, you should know better than to wander where you don't belong. It has its consequences. Get away from me, she yells, scrambling back up the stairs. But he blocks her path with an ease that sends fresh waves of terror crashing over her. Suddenly, she remembers the passageway, the secrets that lie within. If there's a way to fight back, she might find it there. With nothing but darkness and dread as her allies, she darts toward the basement door, determining to get there first. Behind her, laughter rings out, a chorus of laughter that chills her blood. It's not just Mr. Thompson. Shadows slither from the corners of the basement, merging into something grotesque, a writhing mass dressed in human shapes. They leer and taunt, mocking her every move. "Don't be so hasty, Sarah," Mr. Thompson calls out, stepping closer, his voice edged with an unnatural cadence. "You're not quite ready to know the truth, are you?" But she is ready. She has to be. As she reaches the basement door, her fingers fumble for the knob, dripping sweat and fear. With a violent twist, she yanks it open and plunges into the darkness. The whispers ignite again, swarming over her like angry hornets. Her flashlight flickers wildly as she moves deeper into the passageway, the oppressive silence wrapping around her like a burial shroud. "Breathe," she tells herself. The whispers grow louder, drawing her in as she tries to shake the looming dread that feels as though it's clawing at her throat. Then she sees it, the unmistakable outline of an ancient trunk nestled against the far wall. Dust billows around it as she approaches, and she can feel the heavy weight of history pressing down on her. Should she open it? What horrors lie inside? The distant cracks and creaks of her house echo through the passageway, but they can't distract her from the noise in her own mind, the nursery rhyme her mother used to sing, warning her of things that live in the dark. A shudder dances along her spine as the trunk's rusted latch beckons. Suddenly, the surface of the trunk begins to ripple, as if alive. She recoils, heart hammering in her chest. She can't help but feel that what she unearths next will shift the very fabric of her existence. Taking a deep breath, she takes the plunge and lifts the lid. Time seems to freeze as she peers into the darkness within. A soft, eerie glow emanates from inside, illuminating her face with the sickly light of something that shouldn't exist. The whispers crescendo into a clamorous roar, twisting into a cacophony of lost souls begging for release. What she discovers in that trunk may endanger not just her life, but the lives of everyone she loves. Is this the revelation she needs to confront Mr. Thompson and save her children? But as she reaches for the source of the glow, a cold, shadowy hand grips her wrist, yanking her back from the brink of that revelation. Curiosity has its price, Sarah. Mr. Thompson's voice slithers through the air, filled with malice. Are you willing to pay it? The house trembles around them as the darkness begins to close in, and Sarah realizes with gut-wrenching dread that this battle has only just begun. Will she succumb to the shadows haunting her home? Or will she find a way to defy the terror lurking in the hidden corners of Maplewood? The grip on her wrist was like ice, and Sarah felt every fiber of her being scream in resistance. She jerked back, her instincts urging her to break away from that spectral hold. But the shadows thickened around her, swirling with malevolent intent. She could hardly breathe, the air turning dense with dread as Mr. Thompson's smile remained cemented, mocking her frantic heart. "Let go of me," she gasped, adrenaline surging through her veins. But instead of releasing her, the unseen force only tightened, dragging her closer to the trunk. It felt as though the very walls of the basement were closing in, echoing the chaos in her mind. The whispers clawed at her, urging her to make her choice. Each second stretched on, an eternity of terror. "Such a foolish endeavor," Mr. Thompson said, stepping into the feeble beam of her flashlight. His face was warped, a blend of shadows that played tricks on her eyes. "Do you really think you can handle what's inside? Those who pry into the dark often wish they hadn't." With her heart pounding like a war drum, Sarah forced her gaze to the trunk. The soft glow pulsated from within, but it was no longer inviting. It was sickly. The echoes of pleading souls swelled around her, and her mind reeled. Whatever was inside could lead to her salvation, or her doom. "Enough!" Sarah yelled, mustering a fury she didn't know she had. She yanked her arm away, breaking the icy grip. In her moment of defiance, she leaned over the trunk, her breaths coming in fast, shallow gasps. She needed to see, to understand what had ensnared her. The lid creaked open further, and the glow erupted forth like a dripping wound. shadows coiled in the corners, hidden eyes watching. Inside lay a tattered book covered in sickeningly soft leather, its pages unfurling like the wings of a monstrous creature. The very air pulsed with anticipation. The whispers surged, demanding to be heard. "Release us," they hissed. "Set us free." The cacophony rose, drowning her thoughts, drowning her fears, turning them into soaring chaos. In that moment, Sarah felt an assembly of hopes and horrors. Whatever lay in that tome could expose the truth about Mr. Thompson, about the darkness that pervaded Maplewood, and her instincts screamed at her to read. But caution tugged at her, a voice inside whispering that knowledge might come at a price no one should pay. "Do you want to know what binds them?" Mr. Thompson's voice snaked through the air, his expression darkening. He took a deliberate step toward her. "Their pain is your chance for freedom, Sarah. But it also means binding your soul to the shadows forever." Fear flooded her, the weight of his words settling heavily on her shoulders. She could see now that the trunk represented a doorway, one that could let loose horrors greater than she could imagine, or perhaps, just perhaps, the key to saving her children. As she hovered above that book, trembling hands inching toward it, a deafening crash echoed from above, a desperation-filled scream, one that sent chills tumbling down her spine. The children's panic ignited a flame of strength in her. She had to make a choice now, to read the book and bind herself to the horrors within it, or to abandon the secrets and rush to save the children who might be paying the price for her actions. Before she could decide, the shadows erupted, engulfing the basement like a sentient tide. The trunk began to shudder violently, and the whispers turned to screams, a crescendo of anguish clawing for her attention. "Sarah, choose now." She was left standing on the precipice, everything she cared for in the balance. The choice of knowledge or ignorance lay heavy before her. But as the darkness closed tight, she realized that maybe, just maybe, there was another way to fight back. Would she dare confront the horrors surrounding her? Or would she rush blindly into uncertainty to defend the lives of those she loved? The muffled screams continued, spurring her to action. With a final glance at the glowing trunk, Sarah's heart roared with a primal intensity. She dashed towards the staircase, desperate to face whatever awaited her above. But the shadows twisted and lunged. Shadows that wouldn't let her escape so easily. A sharp crack echoed in the air, silencing everything, and before she could react, Sarah felt the world around her shatter. What awaited her at the top of the stairs could seal her fate forever. The darkness engulfed Sarah like a thick fog, cold and impenetrable. The basement walls seemed to pulse with a heartbeat, a sinister reminder of the horrors contained within. She stumbled backward, the echoes of muffled cries chasing her up the stairs. Her feet felt heavy, each step a battle against the dread that burdened her soul. "Mom, help me!" The voice of her youngest son, Jamie, echoed through the house, a cry laden with innocence. Panic clawed at her throat. She sprinted up the final steps, bursting through the basement door. The familiar coat of damp creaked ominously behind her, as if attempting to keep unwelcome secrets hidden. The narrow hallway was dimly lit, shadows flickering along the walls. Silence wrapped around her, leaving her breathless. "Jamie!" she called, her own voice sounding weak in the stillness. She felt eyes watching, the heavy gaze of ghosts lingering in the corners. "Mom!" The cry pierced through the quiet, louder now, from the living room. She dashed towards it, heart pounding in her chest. As she entered, the air shifted, a sudden chill creeping down her spine. The room was empty, but the horror that clutched at her heart remained. Her family photos hung crooked on the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her, mocking her desperation. "Mom!" His voice, small and scared, seeped out from behind the couch. "I'm scared." She rushed over to find Jamie curled up, eyes wide with terror. "The shadows, they tease me," he whimpered, trembling. As she scooped him into her arms, a gust of freezing air swept through the room, causing her to shiver. "It's okay," she whispered, though her own heart was in turmoil. "We'll be okay. Just stay with me." The shadows swirled dangerously close, dancing along the edges of her vision. She felt their malicious intent. "Where's Danny?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He went to the basement. He said he would come back, but the shadows they won't let him. Jamie buried his face in her shoulder, his small body shaking. No. A wave of nausea hit her. Fear tightened its grip around her throat. Stay here, she commanded, and bolted toward the basement door. As she descended into the pitch blackness, the oppressive silence felt suffocating. The whispering began again, more pronounced than before, laced with desperation and rage. Join us. Set us free. Get away from me, she yelled, fists clenching at her sides. The air seemed charged, crackling with energy that made her hairs stand on end as a sharp cry echoed, and her heart lurched at the familiar sound. Danny! She screamed, racing deeper into the shadows. The flickering light of the trunk pulsed ahead, mocking her anguish. No! She felt the shadows writhe around her, fingers of darkness snatching at her until she was engulfed by their cold embrace. She forced herself forward, refusing to give in. The whispers became a discordant symphony, heralding the danger that lurked just behind her. Danny's voice came again, higher, strained. Mom! Help! A plea that drove her to break through the darkness. As she rounded the corner, she saw him, backed against the wall, eyes wide with terror. Surrounding him was a swirl of shadow, tendrils reaching for him. They seemed alive, writhing and twisting with a hunger she couldn't comprehend. Danny! She hurled herself forward, ignoring the chill clawing at her skin. But as she approached, the shadows turned to solid figures, twisted forms that laughed quietly, voices echoing her own fears. Help me, Mom! He cried, panic washing over her. I'm coming! She dove toward him, but the shadows coiled around her ankles, dragging her down. The darkness wriggled through her thoughts, taunting her with visions of despair. Choose, Sarah. Release them. Mr. Thompson's voice, dripping with malice, enveloped her. Your son or the truth? Her heart pounded, and she fought the shadows that now seemed intent on suffocating her. In that split second, she knew one thing: she had to make a choice. A choice between the darkness that surrounded her and the flickering light of hope that remained contained in the haunted trunk above. Would she open herself to the nightmares to save her son? Or would she risk it all to keep her family safe? As she gasped for breath, the shadows twisted tighter, and a final, chilling question echoed in her mind. How much was she willing to sacrifice to save what she loved most? Sarah's mind raced, trapped in the suffocating embrace of darkness. Heart hammering, she felt the shadows shift and writhe, their whispers growing louder, drowning her in their chorus of despair. Your son or the truth? The words hung heavy in the frigid air, as if the very walls knew of the unimaginable price she faced. The cold nipped at her skin, each tendril of shadow a reminder of the danger that surrounded Danny. She looked into his terrified eyes, a mirror of her own panic. I want to let you go, she rasped, feeling the grip of darkness tighten around her ankles. It was a malevolent living thing, pulling her down into a pit of endless night. Mom, please, Danny cried. His voice, so small, echoed in the cavern of her mind, a haunting refrain she could not ignore. The shadows let out a low, rumbling laugh, their faces morphing into twisted versions of her own nightmare, distorting her fears into gruesome forms. Choose, Sarah, they sang, their voices rising in a terrible harmony. Set us free. The trunk above loomed like an ominous eye, watching her, waiting for her decision. She needed to gather her strength, to fight both for Danny and against the chilling truth within that trunk. Her mind flickered to memory's laughter at the dinner table, Danny's small hand in hers, Jamie's innocent giggles. These memories lit a fire in her heart. I want to give in, she screamed, the words escaping her lips in defiance. She focused on Danny, on how fiercely she loved him, how she would burn down the world before letting harm come to him. With a surge of adrenaline, she flung herself toward the swirling vortex that was the shadows, reaching for her son. Hold on to me, Danny. In a flash of desperation, Sarah wrapped her arms around him, feeling the warmth of his frail body against her. Just as she pulled him tight, the shadows coiled tighter around her, dragging her deeper into their depths. "Let us go." The figures contorted, pressing against her, their whispers turning frantic and furious. "Never!" she roared, and with all her might, she turned her focus to the trunk above, remembering what it represented. The danger, the truth, was waiting to be unleashed. In that moment, she felt the last flicker of her courage light up. "I choose love," she shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. The shadows shrieked, a sound that would haunt her dreams. With one final push, she flung herself backward, pulling Danny as she fell, aiming for the tiny sliver of light that formed between them and the trunk. The shadows convulsed, writhing in fury, but Sarah's resolve blazed bright, a beacon shining through hell, and then, a blinding light. As the darkness recoiled, the shadows whispered in rage, "You cannot escape. We will find you." The basement began to fade, and in an instant, everything erupted into a whirlwind of colors and sounds, the echoes of anguish dissolving into an eerie silence. Sarah took a breath, heavy with uncertainty, and opened her eyes. They were no longer in the basement, but in her living room, trembling bodies sprawled on the floor. Jamie whimpered beside her, and Danny sat wide-eyed. No longer in peril yet, she felt an emptiness gnawing at her core. "Mom? What happened?" Jamie's small voice pulled her back, but dread sunk in. The trunk lay intact, a reminder of unfinished business. "I don't know," Sarah whispered, dread bubbling up inside her, as the house quivered with unspoken horrors. "But we aren't safe yet." From the corners of the room, shadows stirred. They hadn't retreated. They were simply biding their time. A low, sinister laugh echoed through the air, chilling her blood. "Your journey has just begun." Sarah, what deeper truths lay hidden in the trunk? Would her family's safety come at a cost far greater than she had ever imagined? The living room seemed normal, yet everything felt wrong. Anxiety twisted in Sarah's stomach, knotting tighter as her instincts screamed at her. She kept glancing at the trunk, its polished surface reflecting the dim light, holding secrets she was afraid to unveil. The shadows didn't just haunt corners. They crawled closer, tendrils inching toward her family, taunting with malicious whispers. "Mom," Jamie whined softly, his wide eyes darting around the room. "What did that laugh mean?" "It was nothing," Sarah said, forcing calm into her voice, though it felt like a brittle mask. She couldn't afford to show fear. She had to keep them safe. Just shadows playing tricks. Danny's breath came in shallow gasps. "Mom, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to see them again." His small hands clutched the hem of her shirt like a lifeline. "We won," she promised, though uncertainty twisted inside her like a blade. Yet how could she promise? With every heartbeat, the shadows thickened. They draped over furniture, curling around her family, lingering just out of sight. What if they didn't just want the truth? What if they hungered for something more, a piece of her soul, a taste of her grief? Suddenly, a sledgehammer of dread struck her. The trunk, the shadows, always leaving a lingering feeling of unfinished business. "We have to open it," she said, voice barely above a whisper, sending chills skittering down Danny's spine. "No, Mom," he cried. "Please don't." But there was no escaping the pull of the trunk. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she approached it, feeling as though it were alive, breathing in tune with her pounding heart. The unsettling laughter rang in her ears again, not just echoes, but a sinister promise of what lay within. "Please don't," Jamie echoed, tears glimmering in his eyes. Fear gripped her son's small frame, and for a fleeting moment, all she wanted to do was take them and run, far away from this house and its cursed trunk. But then the shadows slithered closer, pooling around her feet like a storm gathering strength. They were watching, waiting. "I have to know," Sarah insisted, trembling as she reached out, her fingers grazing the cold, hard surface of the lid. It felt like a silent scream, trapped, begging to be released as her fingers touched the latch. The room grew impossibly still. The shadows stopped shifting. Their whispers morphed into a mundane chorus, haunting familiarity swirling around them like fog. Find out the truth, Sarah, they cooed, the sweet tones now accompanied by an undercurrent of malice. Open it, the latch clicked, louder than thunder in the silence of the room. Sarah's breath hitched, and she hesitated. She could feel an unseen weight pressing against her, like 1,000 eyes fixated on her. But with every passing moment, the shadows surged closer. They could sense her fear, drinking it in like nectar. Mom, Danny's voice cracked, a plea laced with desperation. I know, baby, I know. But Sarah couldn't stop now. Summoning every ounce of courage she had left, she threw the lid open. The trunk creaked in protest, revealing depths far darker than she imagined. Inside lay a scrawled note, the paper yellowed and frayed, but the words were unmistakably vivid. To know the truth, one must pay the price. The shadows screamed in unholy chorus, their laughter melding with the whimper of her children. They leapt forward like ravenous wolves, filling the room with ominous energy. Sarah, in that moment, she understood there was something her family would lose if she dove deeper into this shadowy abyss. She felt it, a tangible threat gnawing at the edges of her heart. What is the price? She whispered, afraid to ask. As shadows surged and swirled around her, drenching the room in dread, she felt the chill of reality settle upon her. She had opened the trunk. But what had she unleashed? In the darkness, the shadows laughed, and it echoed through her dreams, taunting her with chilling possibilities. Prepare for your reckoning, Sarah. The truth is just the beginning. What awaited her inside the abyss? The answers hid deeper than she could fathom. The shadows swirled, pulling in tight around Sarah, Danny, and Jamie, their laughter resonating like a mad symphony. The price, the whispers taunted, each word casting a chill that gripped Sarah's heart. She felt it freeze in her chest, constricting her ability to think, to breathe. Mom, please, Danny whimpered, his small frame trembling against her leg. Jamie pressed closer, his tiny fingers digging into Sarah's arm as if he could anchor them to safety. Yet safety was a forgotten concept, drowned in the dark sea of night and the horrors lurking just beneath the surface. Sarah's past crashed over her like a wave, dark memories flooding back of decisions made, sacrifices accepted. She had always vowed to protect her children. But now, it seemed that the cost was unfolding right in front of her. Hold tight, she whispered to her boys, though she could barely acknowledge the tremor in her own voice. Stepping backward, she felt the trunk's jagged edge nip at her presence, drawing her in, tempting her to explore what lay within the truth. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of despair and promises, urging her to delve into the trunk's cavernous depths. She could feel its power a pulse, vibrating with stories of regret and despair too heavy to bear. What does it want? Jamie's voice barely reached her over the rising chaos. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and understanding that far exceeded his age. Danny's tears glistened like trapped stars, reflecting the ominous glow emanating from the trunk. Whatever it is, we have to fight it, Sarah forced out, her voice steadier than she felt. Stay close. Instinctively, she gathered them to her, creating a barrier of flesh against the encroaching darkness. Open the trunk, Sarah. An icy voice echoed, dancing around her mind. Was it even real? Or were the shadows playing tricks, feasting off her turmoil? The truth can set you free. Stop, she screamed, cutting through the whispers, the laughter, the clamor of shadows. But with her command, the very walls seemed to tremble, listening to her, judging her. If you want the truth, you'll have to take it from me. The room fell silent, save for the echo of her heartbeat. The shadows pulled back, almost surprised by her defiance, revealing glimmers of the living room once again. But the reprieve was short-lived. Something shifted in the air, a sense of foreboding gathering like a storm cloud, heavy and dark. Mom! Danny cried, his small voice cracking through the tension. Look! Sarah turned to see what had caught his attention. The light fixture above, flickering, casting strange, distorted shadows around them. Then, from the corner, the trunk began to vibrate subtly. She stepped back, her heart racing as it trembled like a living creature. Suddenly, the lid slammed shut on its own, sending a shudder through the room that rattled her bones. A burst of energy surged forth as heavy shadows writhed against the walls, expanding and contracting. Sarah could hardly breathe, reality folding like paper under the weight of some unseen force. Sarah, the whispers returned, smoother now, slinking into her thoughts. "You've disturbed us. You've invited us in." "No," she shouted, thrusting a hand out, as if sheer willpower could push back the encroaching darkness. "You don't belong here." But in a rush, the shadows whirled around her, tendrils of darkness wrapping around her wrists and ankles, pulling her down. Sarah could feel their icy grip tighten, pulling her toward the trunk, toward the truth waiting inside. "Mom, don't leave us." With a surge of adrenaline, she screamed. "Stop." The shadows recoiled momentarily, hesitation stretching across their edges. "Just tell me, what is the price?" she demanded, daring the darkness to answer. The army of shadows loosened and the laughter grew sharp, almost glee-filled. "Only your allegiance in that moment of weakness." Something inside her cracked open. Memories flashed: her parents, lost to despair. Her childhood, riddled with neglect. Those profound losses felt like shrapnel in her heart, ready to tear her apart. "Don't look away, Sarah," they sneered. "This is just the start." And right then, as the shadows thickened around her, weaving heavy chains of fate, Sarah knew, indeed, the darkness sought her devotion. Her resolve teetered on the edge of an unfathomable chasm. What more could she lose? What were they truly after? The shadows answered in unison, their voices a low, seductive hum weaving a new fear into her mind. "Complete the sacrifice, and the truth will be yours." As she stood on the brink, the air heavy with the unknown, Sarah felt the shadows pulse with anticipation around her. What would be left to give? The truth awaited, but at what cost? The shadows closed in tighter, a shroud of dread pressing down on Sarah and her boys. The room felt alive, pulsing with malicious intent. Sarah could hear the murmurs echoing louder now, as if the walls themselves were laughing at her impending doom. The weight of her past crashed against her consciousness, a relentless tide that threatened to pull her under. "Stay with me," she whispered fiercely, squeezing Jamie's small hand. He nodded, wide-eyed, while Danny clung to his mother, fear as deep as the ocean reflected in his gaze. The shadows danced around them, buzzing with a sinister hunger, yet somewhere deep inside, a flicker of defiance ignited in Sarah's heart. "Allegiance?" she spat, breathing heavily. "You think I'll submit to you?" The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned. Then, with a sudden uproar, they seized her words, twisting them into a cacophony of laughter that resonated through the room. "We are the echoes of your fears, the manifestations of your regrets," they crooned. "You already belong to us, Sarah. Your past has sealed your fate." "No," she shouted, stepping forward, fueled by desperation and a flicker of hope. She felt the cold tendrils recede just a little, as if her defiance momentarily disoriented them. The room's flickering lights settled into a dull glow, illuminating the edges of the familiar space that felt increasingly foreign. "Mom, please!" Danny's voice broke through her thoughts, quaking with fear. Sarah turned to him, and for a heartbeat, she felt the weight of 1,000 whispers collapsing, capturing her in a web of despair. "I'll fight this," she declared, her voice rising, choking back the darkness swirling in her throat. "I won't let you take my children." Suddenly, the trunk shuddered violently, the lid rattling against the base. A gust of wind burst forth, extinguishing the flickering light. Panic clawed at her throat as darkness enveloped them, wrapping around her like a funeral shroud. "Let us go," she screeched, dragging Danny and Jamie with her towards the door. But the shadows were quicker. They snaked along the floor, weaving between their legs, an encroaching pack of wolves. Sarah stumbled, her feet tantalizingly pulled backward, toward the trunk's beckoning darkness. Despair thudded heavily. She felt the whispers growing ferocious, clawing at her skin. "Join us," the shadows hissed, now a chaotic army circling her, voices mingling into a hypnotic chant. Join us and the pain will cease. She could see faces forming in the dark, twisted, lost souls that reached out to her with desperate hands, the reflections of every failure that had haunted her for so long. "Mom!" Jamie screamed, his eyes wide with terror as he struggled to break free from her grasp. "Don't let them take you. Danny, Jamie, run!" Sarah bellowed, willing her feet to move, to push through the eruption of shadows. Adrenaline coursed through her, but it felt like swimming against a tide of despair. The room quaked, and she could feel the box's call intensifying. It thumped as if alive, demanding recognition. "Just give in." The shadows taunted more vehemently, slipping through her fingers, clawing at her heart. With a sudden burst of clarity, Sarah closed her eyes. She didn't know how to fight them, but she wouldn't let them win. "I am not yours," she screamed. "You may know my pain, but I'm still here." The shadows recoiled as something bright sparked within her, a flicker of a long-lost determination. "You're wrong," she roared, and it felt like a wave crashing against the oppressive dark, throwing off some of the weight binding her ankles. But as the shadows writhed, a chilling realization slithered into her mind. What if the price isn't just about me? The laughter morphed into shrieks of anger and anguish, and in that moment, the trunk trembled violently. Life and death intertwined, the price for knowledge echoing ominously in the air. And then, a silence cloaked them, thick and layered with expectation. Sarah felt a cold breath against her ear. "The truth isn't for you alone." The shadows pulled back, hovering expectantly as if waiting for her decision. Uncertainty gnawed at her gut, and time seemed to stall. What truth awaited her? Danny whimpered beside her, and Jamie squeezed his brother's hand tighter. She had to make a choice, but as her heart raced, the shadows twisted and pulsed, holding their breath, reveling in the chaos of her mind. Would it be the end or the beginning of something far worse? The air crackled with unspoken dread as Sarah stood at the brink of a decision, her heart hammering in her chest. The shadows, momentarily hesitant, shimmered with predatory eagerness, ready to feast on her uncertainty. "What truth?" she demanded, her voice quaking yet resolute. The whispers morphed into a single chilling voice, echoing through the suffocating darkness. "You cannot escape the past, Sarah. It will come for you one way or another." With that statement, the shadows lunged forward, swelling and contorting like a billowing storm, seeking cracks in her defenses. "Get back," she shouted, instinct kicking in. She grabbed her boys tighter, instinctively huddling them against her side. "We can't let them take us." The warmth of Jamie and Danny's bodies grounded her, but fear spiked as she felt the shadows brushing against her skin, cold and clammy. In a desperate attempt to break the hold of despair, Sarah hurled herself towards the trunk, knowing it held secrets of her past. "You think you can have me? You think I'm weak?" she screamed, feeling a surge of rage course through her. With each step she took toward the trunk, the shadows shrieked, recoiling as if stung. "What are you doing?" Jamie pleaded, pulling at her arm. "We need to get out. I need to know," she replied, her breath coming in jagged gasps. The trunk loomed larger, a silent sentinel of her tortured memories. Staring at its warped surface felt like staring deep into a mirror of her soul, the darkness ebbing and flowing like an angry tide. Suddenly, the trunk burst open with a defiant creak, sending a jolt through the air. Inside was a swirl of mist and faint glimmers of light. It beckoned her, a maelstrom of faces, each one twisted with anguish and longing. She hesitated, torn between diving into this unknown or shielding her children from the darkness that sought to claim her. "Mom!" Danny's voice broke through again, sharp as a knife. "Please don't." But as Sarah hesitated, the shadows twisted violently, surging toward them with renewed ferocity. They clutched at her and her boys, fingers of shadow twisting into tendrils of fear. "You'll lose them," they shrieked, their voices a tornado of despair. "Join us, and you'll find peace." Her heart thundered wildly. Could she risk her children's safety just to uncover secrets best left buried? A staggering realization crashed down upon her. What if the truth wasn't simply about facing her past but understanding how it intertwined with their futures? No, she roared, growing stronger within the storm of shadows as the stakes became clearer. I refuse to be a prisoner of your promises. My truth is not yours to take. The shadows writhed angrily, disturbed by her defiance, but she felt something shift. A pulse of warmth spread through her, a connection with her boys. They were her strength. They would not be lost in the darkness. Danny, Jamie, she yelled, gripping their hands tighter. Trust me. Together, they stepped back, forming a barrier of family against the swirling chaos. With one swift motion, Sarah reached into the trunk, driven by a mixture of terror and defiance. If I must face the darkness, I will do it with my family. As her fingers grazed the cool mist swirling within, a blinding light erupted from the trunk, illuminating the room. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of desperate voices cascading into panic. Then, as if an unseen force ejected them, the shadows surged backward, retreating into the corners of the room, leaving only silence and the stunning glow. But the gleam glimmered with an urgency that felt alive, pulling her in, enticing her to delve deeper. Mom! Danny yelled, his face lit with a mix of fear and awe. What is happening? I don't know, she breathed, entranced by the enigma before her. The light surged with potential, vibrant and threatening. She had made a choice, but was it the right one? One question stung her. If she uncovered the truth, what dark legacy would she unleash? And as the shadows grumbled from the edges, reforming with vengeful intent, Sarah held her breath, knowing that this was only the beginning. What awaited them on the brink of revelation? The blinding light poured from the trunk, illuminating every shadow cowering against the walls. At that moment, Sarah felt a surge of strength course through her. The whispers faded, replaced by a deep, resonant pulse that echoed in her chest, an ancient heartbeat, connecting her to the truth she was about to unveil. Trust me, she whispered to her boys, squeezing their tiny hands once more. As she stepped closer to the trunk, the light beckoned her, warm against the cold, clammy air that filled the room. It felt like a gateway, a promise of something more than just revelation. It was salvation. Tendrils of darkness writhed, but with each step Sarah took, they shrank back, as if afraid. Her pulse quickened, her heart hammering as she reached into the radiant glow. Her fingers brushed against papers hovering like ghosts, and as she drew them out, images flooded her mind, a collage of moments entwined with joy and pain, laughter and loss. Sifting through the pages, she saw flashes of her past. Her childhood home, filled with warmth before it turned into a haunted memory. Her parents, loving yet tormented by their own shadows. Glimpses of Maplewood, its friendly facades masking hidden scars. She gasped, heart aching at the weight of what they endured together. How their sorrow had been her burden to bear. What is it, Mom? Danny's question cut through her reverie. She glanced at him, his eyes wide with fear and wonder. I don't know yet, she replied, trying to mask her own confusion. But then she realized. The truth was woven within those pages, the connection to the shadows that haunted her now. Mom, please, the shadows. Jamie's voice trembled, and she turned to the corners of the room. The darkness stirred, a tempest ready to unleash chaos, the laughter rising again as if relishing her hesitation. No, she shouted, her voice igniting strength. You will not take us again. The shadows hesitated, wavering for a heartbeat. It was just enough. Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing, and with her boys at her sides, she held up one of the pages. By acknowledging our past, I can save us, she declared. You can't hold my family in fear any longer. The page pulsed with energy, absorbing the light pouring from the trunk. Suddenly, the room filled with vibrant colors, swirling memories splashing against the walls, a cascade of laughter intertwined with sorrow. And then she saw them, the faces of those lost, their eyes reflecting the same resolve she felt. They weren't merely trapped, but waiting for someone to bear witness, to tell their stories. You want a sacrifice? She cried, facing the swirling darkness. I will tell your truths, and in doing so we reclaim our power. The shadows screamed, their furious wails merging, turning into an anguished symphony. You think you can erase us? They roared, crashing forward. But Sarah's heart blazed like a nova. No, I break the chains of my past. The page in her hand shimmered, radiating strength that countered the encroaching terror. Darkness recoiled, thrumming, feeling the gravity of her words. With that proclamation, clarity poured over her. She began to read aloud, words spilling forth like a waterfall, each syllable laced with her resolve. The stories she unveiled were powerful, the truth beyond the shadows that had long held her hostage. Maplewood was built on secrets, on the pain of its people. She felt the energy of the shadows push against her, but they were fraying, trembling at the weight of her declarations. Those who were left behind are not lost. They are family, and I honor them. With each word, the room trembled, the light swirling vibrantly like a beacon. The shadows twitched, crying out intangible fear, their forms shifting chaotically. Begin the healing, and the darkness will lay to rest, she shouted, her voice unwavering. The walls shook, shadows swirling in a tempest of rage. Suddenly, a deafening crack filled the air. The trunk jolted as if a great power had surged within, erupting in a flood of radiant light. The shadows screeched, then began to disperse, retreating into the corners, dimming to faint wisps as if a vacuum had swallowed them. Together, Sarah screamed, pulling her boys closer. Fight back, and they did. The weight of their collective spirit ignited like dry kindling. The shimmer enveloped them, wrapping her family in its embrace, illuminating the specters of the past who had merged with the light, finally free. I love you, Sarah shouted, feeling tears spill over her cheeks. The laughter of her boys mingled with the light as they pulled each other close, hearts pounding in unity as the light intensified. It danced joyously, swirling messily yet with purpose, rhythmically engulfing the last remnants of darkness until the shadows faded away entirely, leaving an empty, silent room behind. The air grew still, charged with the essence of liberation. They were safe now, but as the warmth settled around them, Sarah knew the journey was far from over. The trunk hadn't disappeared. It lay intact, a reminder of their trials and triumphs. It was a vessel waiting patiently, sensing stories yet to be written. Drawing a deep breath, she felt both relief and resolve. Whatever lies ahead, we face it together, she said, determination glinting in her eyes. Together, Jamie and Danny echoed, held tight under her arm, laughter spilling into the air where shadows once lingered. And in that moment, as dawn broke outside, a brand new day shimmered to life, full of potential and hope. This was their story, a tale of courage and beginning anew, and they would write it every step of the way. If you felt the chills of this story, you need to subscribe now. Don't let the fear fade away. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm and keep the stories flowing. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your thoughts matter. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling conclusion. Your support is everything to us.